go one more time. Hey everybody, welcome to our We Are Worship Wednesday webinar. This is what it's called, right?
Yeah, sure.
Because it turns into so many things.
Yeah.
Webinar, it's a podcast.
We have a lot of names for it. So.
Webinar. Webinar is good.
Yeah.
So, welcome. If you're new here, thanks for joining in. We are worship.
And you are worship.
Yeah. And you are worship, and you get a card, and you get a card. I'm just kidding. So, We Are Worship is a resource website, and we house thousands of chord charts, MP3s, lead sheets, blog posts. You need something for Sunday morning, you go to weareworship.com and you search for it, because we probably got it. So, at We Are Worship, we give away free stuff, and that's a perk for signing up for We Are Worship, which is also free. So, you get 2 free songs. Well, I guess this week you technically get 2 free songs. But our first song is the free song of the week, which is Carry It by John Egan. And then our hymn of the month is Worship the Great I Am by Carrie Job. So if you go to weareworship.com, you can log in and you can download them for free. And then next week you'll get a new free song. And then next week you'll get a new free song.
It should be called We Got Worship.
Oh,
I'm going to buy that right now.
$9.99 for 2
Great
years.
idea. So today we're really excited to have Leslie Jordan of All Sons and Daughters with us here in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you.
Leslie is a worship leader here locally in Nashville and songwriter extraordinaire.
Yes.
And a mother to a dog, right?
Yes, 2 dogs.
Two dogs.
Two
Two.
dogs.
What kind of
There
dogs
you
do you
go.
have?
A yellow lab and then a mix. He's a blue heeler, beagle, English shepherd mix.
What are their names?
Duke is the lab, and he weighs 90 pounds.
No.
He's a giant. And Higgins is the
Higgins,
little-
that's a cute name.
He's pretty cute.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you've written a lot of songs for the church, so I think it's really appropriate that we're talking about songwriting for the church. One of the songs maybe everybody would be familiar with, Great Are You, Lord, is something that you're a part of. So how did you get started in songwriting?
Well, I was an angsty teenager when I first started playing the guitar, so I wrote a bunch of angsty teenage songs. I think that was the first stuff I wrote. And all about my emotions and things you can't process at that age. So started writing
Taylor
songs.
Swift stuff.
The Taylor's, yeah, oh, totally. Boys and family and animals and you name it.
Yeah.
I was writing it. And then I started, really church music for me wasn't something that I even had an eye on.
Mhm.
I grew up in the church and I've loved music my whole life and played music really since I was 9. And it just kind of happened out of being a part of this community, this church family here in Franklin called Journey Church.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of that outward expression of what I had received from that family, and songwriting through my through middle, high school, and college was all singer-songwriter, experiential, moments, stories, that kind of thing. And then when I found this church family, it was kind of that natural, I want to serve this family with something. And it was terrifying because I'd never written songs for worship before. I was like, I don't know how to do that. And I think what happened in that process for me was I found collaboration was the key to that. Now, I don't think that that's the end all be all for writing songs for worship, but I think there's a beauty in writing songs for community when you're writing them in community, so together with other people. So yeah, that's kind of how it all got started. And
Very cool.
it's been
It's pretty unique because a lot of people will be like, oh, I want to serve the church. So they'll go like on the greeting team or this and that, and nobody thinks I'm going to write songs for my church.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
that's how I'm going to serve.
and I had no idea at the time. I was on staff and I was working there, but I had no idea that we would ever play them or lead them. It was just kind of like, I just really want to do this. And that's when I actually met David. So the worship pastor there at the time introduced us. He said, hey, the 2 of you have both expressed a desire to write songs for the church. There's no real program here for that, so why don't you guys get together and see what happens? And we wrote a song. I think our first one was a song called Ready to Move, which I don't think anybody would have ever heard.
Was it like a dance techno?
No, it should have been.
I can picture y'all.
Ready to dance.
Yeah.
Ready to flag worship. No, and then like 2 songs later, we wrote "Come to Save Us," which has been one of our favorites, especially in the Advent season. And so like the songs just started coming out of that season for us because we were both connected to small groups, and in that season of life, God was just of.
So you weren't trying to do
I didn't
demos and
even
send it
know
out to
what that
labels?
meant. I had no idea. Like I spent the majority of my time in Nashville. I went to Middle Tennessee State University, and so where you went?
Yes. Yes.
Blue Raiders right here. Sorry, Wisdom, you wouldn't get it. I saw the recording industry program, and it was so intimidating. Like I don't want anything. I just can't me from what Nashville does a lot of times to musicians, which is like you have to do this and be this in order to become what your version of success. And so no, I was super protected from that, and really in maybe several ways kind of hiding behind the church, almost going like, this is my safe place. I've been maybe called out into that world, but it's too scary. So I'm just going to stay here. And then God goes, okay, well, if that's where you want to stay, then I'm going to find an avenue for you to, I'm going to pull you out of your comfort zone a little bit. And so now I'm kind of in that world. I find myself in those conversations. I'm sitting with you guys, and you guys serve the church in Nashville, Tennessee. And it's been a pretty sweet journey to hear. So yeah.
And by the way, if you guys are watching live right now and not listening to this later, you guys can actually submit questions, and we'll try to get those answered while we're talking.
So what was the process for you when you started writing songs for your church?
At the time, there was no process. It was just write whatever we were sensing. So, or what season we were going through. And like I said, there was just no structure or foundation. It was just David and I trying to figure it out. And David was in a band and on the road. And so every time we would write a song, he'd go, you think maybe you could lead that one at church on Sunday? So I would try it. And, you know, if it worked, we were like, oh, okay, well that one was great. So let's maybe kind of use that model. And so I'm trying to think, one of the first songs that we really led that people started singing at Journey was All the Poor and Powerless, and Spirit Speaks. Those 2 songs, I think, were 2 that kind of made us go, this is something we really want to do. We want to keep doing. And so since then, it's just kind of, it's evolved into, there's a lot of different areas that you pay attention to in writing songs for worship, context, you know, like there's certain styles that we know our people probably aren't going to sing musically, instrumentally. Does it fit the messaging, the ethos of our people? And so, it's kind of become the system that now we have, that we take with us when we go on the road. We share this with a lot of worship leaders. It usually starts with relationship, like that. When we write with other people, when we sit in a room with other people, we spend a ton of time just getting to know each other. There's really no way to move beyond. I think the spirituality of writing songs for a church, it has to come. The Spirit is that relational thing within us. So that's been a really cool movement into that, and sitting with other worship pastors and going, who are you? How do you care for your people? What do your people need to sing? What do we need to sing? So we're asking all those questions before we sit down and write those songs. And we've been surprised how they kind of come out of that. But,
So you encourage local churches to be writing their own songs. Is that something like you're passionate about, or do you want them to sing your songs?
No, we started out writing songs for Journey. And we still do. You know, this new project we have coming out is probably the most unique of all the projects we've done. Everything we've done up to this point has been specifically for our church in the season our church has been in. And even still, Poets and Saints kind of, the idea kind of came in a season we were going through church history. So it still, in a sense, was birthed from that place. But we believe that the topic of Poets and Saints is a little bit bigger than it. We know it's broader than just our community. And but we just started a songwriting community at Journey, And we've got like 21 songwriters, people who have never written worship songs before, saying the same things we did 10 years ago. Like, no, there's no way I could do that. Please don't ask me to be a part of that. But they're all diving in head first. And we actually spent some time yesterday together recording some songs to give away to our people. So no agenda other than we think these are the songs our church needs to sing right now. So yeah, we love to encourage local song leaders to dig in, write for your people. What's God teaching you? Tie it all back to scripture. Find something that is unique in the season of learning for you, because maybe not every Hillsong record is going to meet you where you're at. Maybe not every Passion record, maybe not every All Sons and Daughters record is going to have a song that's specifically for you. So you'll never know unless you try.
Yeah. By the way, Sergio from Brazil says hi, and
hi.
He loves your music.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Sergio.
So this songwriting community that y'all have at church, how did you decide, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to, find these people or give this opportunity to the people in our church who want to write songs. Like, how did that come about?
I'll try to give the condensed version. It was in February, and I was praying one morning, and I heard the word fold, and I didn't grow up in a charismatic church, so I was kind of like, did I eat something funny? I told my husband later, and he goes, oh, maybe God was talking about all that laundry we've been avoiding for the last week. Like every time we walk by the guest room, that's where all the laundry is.
Gosh,
it's like he's telling us we got to fold the laundry. But I started digging in, and I found myself in the passage in John 10 where he talks about the sheepfold, the good shepherd. And our church is going through a really interesting season right now where we found ourselves without a building. Our lease ran out on our space, so we're meeting in another church's space on a Sunday night. So different time, different space. We've had a lot of staff that have left to go plant other churches or take other jobs. And so there's just a ton of moving pieces. And in that scaling down and pruning process, I felt like what God was saying to me in that moment was, and after reading that scripture, a lot of times when the sheep wander outside the fold, when they're not in their place of safety, that place of knowing that the shepherd is right there, and the shepherd's leading them somewhere off in the distance. The only way to know whether it's the shepherd's voice they're hearing or the thief's voice is by the sound of his voice. So it's really important as sheep to know the voice of our shepherd. And so how do we do that in today's context? How do we lean in, especially with devices and things that just they're always talking. Everything's always communicating to us. So how do we learn to really decipher God's voice in the midst of all of those things? Because I don't think we can say, well, shut it all off and shut it all down. But how do we stay in tune with his voice? And I felt like as songwriters and as musicians, we have a really unique opportunity, because music's always been a part of our lives, and I've heard so many people say, okay, those lyrics, they said the thing that I didn't know that I needed to say, or that song in this season of my life spoke to me in this way. So songs have the power to speak, right? And so I felt like in order for us to hear God's voice, we needed to almost activate our musicians and say, hey, what are you hearing from God? And how can we use music in this season of our life of wandering along looking for the fold? How can we use this music to hear God's voice? And so that was really all that was where it came from. And it's been really beautiful to watch these folks just kind of dive in. And there's been a lot of collaboration, and in collaboration there's a temptation to compare. There's a temptation to be so critical and fearful that you don't want to do it anymore. But I've watched people just keep pushing through those barriers, and it's been really beautiful to be a part of. Last night we had just a moment of celebration at the end of one of the songs. We were tracking gang vocals with everybody, and we just had a moment of spontaneous worship, which isn't like a thing we do at our church. So we were like, all right, let's just have some space to sing out, and it just led us into this time of Thanksgiving, and so it's really sweet. I encourage, for no other reason, if songs don't come out of that process, it is a way to connect with your team, with your other leaders, to strengthen and disciple and to encourage and to release, to you know, a greater calling, even if those songs are never heard or sung. You know, it's drawing you into something bigger, more connected.
Yeah, I'm seeing that more and more with churches starting their own, you know, community of songwriters, and it's like their own like home group or small group, you know, and they like, I think songwriting is such a personal and like emotional thing. You can like really grow together, you know, spiritually, and help each other grow as songwriters, you know. So we have a question from John. He says, what was your process from getting a song like All the Poor and Powerless from the writing room to the regional and national exposure?
Well, Integrity Music has a lot to do with that. We Are Worship has a lot to do with that. We didn't have that goal in mind. The exposure was never the goal. So we were going through a series in the Psalms that summer when we wrote All the Poor and Powerless, and we got to Psalm 22, and I was so blown away by the words. And I remember we were in a season of asking, what does it look like to create an atmosphere of worship? And we didn't really know how to answer that question at that season. We had just come out of where we were kind of coming through a really contemplative season of lament. And so this passage to me really outlined like the beauty of why we gather and why we sing together and what's going to happen down the road. That this is just the beginning of a life filled with response to who God is. So that song came out of that Psalm series, and really the only agenda was for Journey Church. And I don't even know how to say this is the way to get that done. Because for us, it was kind of, it was totally the Lord. I know that sounds really like, sometimes that sounds like a cop-out answer, you know, but we led them at church. And then we had somebody who was working for Integrity at the time come to us and say, hey, these songs that you guys have been leading, are you in a band? And we're like, no. Do you want to be in a band? No, we don't. Like, we had no desire. It was just, and I'm not saying that I'm not saying that to sound like super holy. And this was the, you know, there was fear, there was insecurity, there was all that stuff there. But it had to be God that did it, because we just didn't have any sort of, we didn't have any desire for that. David had just come off the road from another band of like 8 years of being on the road. He's like, heck no, I don't want to be in another band, you know? And so going and meeting with Integrity was a big step for us, because we said, hey, here's our non-negotiables. We don't want to have to leave our church family. You know, we see a lot of musicians who spend a lot of their time away from their homes and their actual families and their church families. And so, I don't. It's a long way of saying I don't know how to answer your question.
Well, I think y'all, I mean, you're writing for your church and you're just being honest. Like, you had no intentions of that song going to where it went, but God knows what we need. And so, you know, he placed that in y'all's lives at that moment for that reason, and just took off with it. And of course, y'all are just writing from where y'all are at. You're not thinking, okay, we're going to get this on the radio. We're going to, you know, everybody's going to be singing this. Like, I don't think anybody knows that that's ever going to happen. Right. You know, like, totally. I can't go into that writer room and say, this song will be on the radio and it will be, like, you just haven't, you don't know.
Yeah, you can't do that.
And for the fact that it went way beyond where you could ever imagine it's gone, just shows that, like, God has placed that in y'all at the right time. Yeah. And just that song got birthed out of that, because you were just being honest. Yeah. And you are obeying what the Lord, you know, the gifts that the Lord's given you. So I don't know, like,
that's really cool.
And I really appreciate, like, your purity of heart with that approach, you know, because it's really sad in today's worship movement and culture. There's so many people writing songs and trying to make things happen and put together a band and trying to get signed and get things on radio and trying to almost build their own platform. And I think God really honors, like, when you take the little things that he gives you and, you know, stay faithful to that. So I think that's a great, you know, story of, like, how that can happen when you're not even expecting it to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We're still, I mean, we still, when we travel, people start singing the song, like, how do you know this? Like, it surprises us every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
I think I've interviewed you a couple of times before. And I think you guys mentioned that like you didn't even have a name for your group, and like you were on the airplane and going like, what should we call ourselves before we get to integrity?
Yeah,
like,
we had no
should have
idea.
some
So
ideas.
how did All Sons and Daughters like come about?
Oh my gosh. So David is the more creative of the two of us. So he had like a long list of names. And there was the fact that it was a duo, a guy and a girl. There was kind of that original play on words. So the band name came originally it was Sons and Daughters, and then there was a band in Scotland called Sons and Daughters, and they sent us a lovely email that said, "Please stop using our name." And we were like, "Whoa, we must be a threat!" You know? Like they don't want us to use it. Like we were. I think the only thing we had ever done was Creation West. At that point, we were like, "Ooh, we're getting in trouble."
Yeah.
We felt like outlaws. And so I sent him back an email and just said, "Hey, if it's okay for lack of confusion, would you care if we just added the word all to the beginning? I think it would still mean the same thing that we're going for, because Sons and Daughters, obviously the play on the guy and the girl, but this idea that we're a part of something much bigger.
Yeah.
And the beauty of the kingdom of God is that, man, he looks at all of us and calls us his kids. And so we're like, all right, well, this is for the church. This is for other people than just us. So that's how the name came about. And even though we had to change it, we still like it, I guess.
So can you maybe share some practical tips for churches who are wanting to maybe do something what you're doing with your church, starting a community of songwriters, but they don't have a professional songwriter, that's anywhere near their church. So they don't even know how to lead a group like that.
Yeah.
So what's kind of like the plan? Like how do you even approach that and start that?
I think for a lot of communities, songwriting doesn't even feel like it is on the map. So I would start with songs that already exist. And maybe not like, again, to use the reference Hillsong or Passion, or maybe not those songs, but hymns. Take it all the way back to the beginning and go, these were songs that were written for the church. There was no radio to aspire to be on. There was no, it was like somebody journaling something.
Yeah.
You read some of those old hymns and you're just like, how does somebody write those kind of words? I was reading Here is Love, Vast as the Ocean. I don't know if you ever remember that hymn, but it was like, on the Mount of Crucifixion, fountains poured out deep and wide. Yeah. I mean, it's just like so the most ridiculous lyric. You're like, okay, first of all, I need to learn how to talk like that. Second of all, I need to learn how to write like that. Hymns are a great place to start. And then the Psalms. They're the origin of our song. And one of our friends last night said to us, David wrote a whole lot of Psalms before he wrote Psalm 23. Psalms that you'll never know, probably. Psalms that you'll never remember. But somehow, that 23rd Psalm, that's the one that people, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. How many people can say that verse by heart? So I think the biggest part, if you're just starting out, if you're interested, start there. Start with the richest, most true form of song you can, and learn from those. So if you've never tried to write like the other ones, don't start there. Start here. And then I would say, for us, we've spent a lot of time just getting to know our community. So that's a big part of it. You're not really going to know what to write. Or what your people need to sing if you're not spending time with them. So that's been a huge part of what we do. We're home a lot. We travel a lot. We're home on the weekends. Like, it's not a negotiable for us. We're there on Sundays. We're in our small groups during the week. We're in community with other leaders and other people in the church. And I think that's a big thing that people miss out on when starting a songwriting community is, all right, well, let's just start this little dude, and then we'll only always ever be in this community. But really what that should be is like this moment of reporting back, of going, all right, we've been out on the front lines. This is what we see that's going on. And we're bringing that back to this group and we're talking about it. We're saying, okay, well, how can we sing that in a song? Yeah. And let some of those experiences shape what you write. We had a friend one time tell us, another songwriter in town, Mia Fields, she said, you have to write the bad songs to get to the good songs.
Mm.
And then she also said that songwriting is 7% talent and 93% limiting your distractions, which I love, because I was like, oh man, if I can, I'm like, please don't make me do this. So find a time, set aside time to go be with somebody else and sit down and start writing songs and just keep writing them. Don't feel like the first song you write has to be shout to the Lord. Let it be exactly what it is.
So in your songwriting community, do you encourage them to co-write with each other? Do you set those up for them? Like, do you kind of navigate that?
Yeah. So I did at the beginning, and I'm trying to be a little more open-handed. And it's funny how those moments now aren't working as well. So I'm going back a little bit and going, okay, maybe I should organize a little bit more. But right out of the gate, it was like, all right, here's your group, here's your group, here's your group. And so I think sometimes that works. Especially in volunteer situations. It's like the more organized you can be, if you are setting out to lead a group of people in that way, the better. If you don't really know what you're doing or you feel directionless, the people won't really know how to initiate or step out. So
have a lot of people come to you and say, oh yeah, I loved writing with this group, or like co-writing is not for me. Like, have you had anybody come to you?
I've had a little bit of both. I've had a couple people who they wrote together once and then they wrote together again, and it was like the first 2 songs were like, holy cow, those are amazing. Third time, total bomb. They were like, okay, maybe we should move on to a different group. But it's creating chemistry. There's other people who go, yeah, we didn't really click, or we had a really hard time finding time to actually do it. You can see the ones who want to, you can tell the ones who don't. And we're in the infancy stage right now. I've been really protective. I was telling that to a friend this morning. The desire is not to be exclusive, but right now I think starting smaller is better. So start small. If you have a handful of folks at your church who write songs or want to write songs, gather those folks and go, let's be the guinea pig of this. Let's experiment together first before we bring other people into this, so we know what works for our community and we can put some structure around it. So right now we're in that kind of putting some structure around it phase, and it's been really fun.
So when a group finishes a song, do you critique the songs? Do you turn them into the pastor or the church board? Like,
the song is terrible.
Yeah. Oh man, that actually was like my worst nightmare, was going like, okay, what do I do when there are songs that I feel a certain way about?
Yeah.
And so luckily, thanks be to God, we have you guys know Sarah McIntosh. Sarah McIntosh is now our worship, I call her pastor, whatever, titles don't matter. She's our pastor. Sarah McIntosh is now the worship leader at Journey. So she's leading all of that ministry, which has been awesome. So I get to be the champion, like, these songs are so. And Sarah's going, hey, what if? She actually came to me the other day because I wrote a song with another girl. And she the text was, hey, don't shoot me, but what would you think about switching up that chorus or switching up that bridge, And then I was like, man, that's great. Yes, absolutely. We totally should. So she's kind of assumed that role of helping craft some of those songs. And the first one I stepped into was a group had written, a husband and wife had written a song, and they took a bridge from another old worship song and made it their bridge. And they really loved it. And I thought it fit great. And I was like, you know what? You can totally do that, but I think you can write a better bridge. I was like trying not to discourage them, but to say, hey, you wrote a really great song. Now I think you can finish it and write an even better bridge. Yeah. And then Sarah came in and even reaffirmed that. And so I think it has to be worked out in community. If there's one person who's the only bad guy or one person who's the only good guy, we're kind of all figuring it out together, which is really great. So, yeah.
That's really cool.
So there's a lot of legal stuff behind songwriting, So do you kind of say, oh, you actually took that from another song? That's copyright.
Yeah.
Do you talk about that as a whole, as your group? Do you just kind of say, hey, if you start to notice that this sounds like this, maybe you should take that out, kind of thing?
Totally. Yeah. Like yesterday, one of the songs we, because we're just really tracking them to give them to our people, so it's not going on anything we're selling. And the one song with the bridge, I said, hey, if we are going to do anything with this song, you have to get in touch with that songwriter.
Mm.
That songwriter has to give you permission and the rights to use. You know, so it's like I do know all of those things because I have been in that position.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is an educational piece to it, but I also don't know that it's in this stage. And for you at your church in this stage of life, it's not. Some of those details can start to bog you down.
Yeah.
You know, and just go like, just be creative. And if you have to take somebody else's bridge so that you can start leading the song at your church, go for it. But when you're ready to do anything with that song, or when you're ready, revisit it and write your own. You know, write your own. Be creative. Write your own. And one of the songs yesterday had a similar melody to a really old church song, and we were like, okay, should we shift a note or two just to, you know, to make a difference? And it wasn't close enough. But yeah, so we talk about that in the group context and in the individual context. So yeah.
Cool. Man, this song really sounds like Christ Be All Around Me.
I know, it's so strange.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys are songwriters and maybe your church, you know, you guys have a community of songwriters, we actually have a really cool way you can share your songs with other songwriters and worship leaders by going to weareworship.com, and there's a green button there that says Song Share. It's like a new thing that we just launched. So you can upload up to 3 songs on there, and other people from all over the world will listen and share their songs and thoughts.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know that
And it's
existed.
cool because you can even upload your own charts. So if you wrote a song and I found you and I'm like, wow, that Leslie Jordan girl, she wrote a really good song. I'm going to use that song in church. Like, I can sing your song in church and I can let you know, like, hey, we led your song in church and it really worked out well.
Really cool.
So I think it's really cool. And I think a lot of people are going to be really excited about it
Beautiful.
too.
I mean, isn't that exactly how Integrity started in the first place? Was putting songs on cassette tapes. You know, like church songs. Like, this church is singing these songs, so let's put them on a cassette tape and mail it out, and let's see if other churches want to sing it.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
We should see if that model still works today. We're gonna send some cassettes of.
Hey man, I heard they're coming back. They're the next thing behind vinyl. It's huge right now, but cassette tape. Somebody was selling them at their merch table. I think it
really?
I think it might have been John McMillan. I don't know for sure.
So next week we'll change that out to a cassette tape.
I think so. Everything comes full circle.
Wow.
You know, we're all going to be wearing bell bottoms again pretty soon, I think. I actually saw a girl wearing them the other day. Coming back.
Yeah.
Wow.
They are.
Yeah. Well, as you know, if you've been watching us every week, we've been doing this every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Central. We're actually going to be switching that up. We're not going to be doing it every Wednesday live. We're going to periodically do it live going forward. And as far as our podcast and our video on YouTube, we're going to be going like bi-weekly. So it's not a weekly podcast and webinar, but it will be bi-weekly. So it will give you more time to like consume the content and take notes and share with your friends and all that good stuff. So we're excited to like really focus in on like really great content like this and great guests like Leslie. So
awesome. I can point you guys to I wrote a blog for a friend of mine, and I want to get her website down. But I basically just kind of gave an outline of like what our process is in writing songs for worship, and it's called Worship Views in the Round.wordpress.com. So it's just a friend. It's a girl who goes to our church. She's been a worship leader for 20 years, and she's amazing. And she said, "Hey, would you mind kind of writing this?" So that the article on her website, and I think We Are Worship tweeted a link to it. So you go back in the Twitter
it's really
archives.
good stuff.
It's just writing songs of worship, and so it just gives a little bit more like practical, like 6 bullet points and kind of some short description and personal experience on if you're getting ready to write a song. Here's the 6 things we've found and come to love when co-writing with other people in the church.
Cool. So worshipviewsintheround.wordpress.com.
Yep.
Cool.
And if people want to connect with you, how can they reach you?
Smoke Signal usually.
Oh,
works.
wow.
Yeah.
We're going way back.
Hymns, smoke signals,
Yeah,
cassette tapes.
You can check us. You can get anytime through Twitter. at all. Oh, it's so confusing. All S and D music. So it's 2 Ds. All S and D music.
Cool.
Twitter, and we're on Facebook and Instagram as well. So socials are a pretty surefire way to get our attention. So
Right.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Cool.
And if you want to connect with us on social media, it's We Are Worship USA. Especially Snapchat. If you're on there, we would love for you to snap us.
Man, I need you to teach me what Snapchat
Okay,
is.
we'll
do a
have a listen
webinar
after
on,
this.
on Snapchat.
Come back at 4 for Snapchat.
It's like I knew I was getting old when I'm like, Snap what?
Yeah.
What?
Well, you got rid of your Facebook, so
I
I
did
don't
get
know
rid
if
of
you
my
want to
Facebook.
explore Snapchat or not.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's better than Facebook.
Is it?
It's
Yeah.
way better. And the stuff goes away anyway, so you don't have to sit there and look at it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you should do it.
Oh my gosh, that article, by the way, that Facebook article, I don't know if you saw the, whatever the link was, the header was, why Leslie Jordan quit Facebook for good. Like it was so dramatic. I was like, wait,
Wow.
So I'm not against social media. I'm just against it wasting my life.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. Don't
Yeah.
blame you.
So that was pretty funny.
Cool. Thank you guys for joining us, and we won't see you next time here, but we'll definitely announce next time we do something live again. So we're now going to be recording some Mondays with Morgan videos with Leslie and David. So look for those on our YouTube channel.
See you guys later.